Ladies and gentlemen, Donny Lalonde. Donny, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Yeah, very happy we live here in Costa Rica and, you know, pura vida is what they say. Pure life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, Costa Rica is getting real popular within like the last five-ish years, I'd say at least with the blue zones. Like they have the longevity.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of the mentality I came here with and for. First came in 1990, 35 years ago, and I was ready to move here then. My wife was like, "This little baby in here, you're not Tarzan, I'm not Jane, and this baby's not going to be raised in the jungle." It took me 10 years to get her here, and then we moved here in 2000, basically.
Okay.
So it's been 23 years.
Nice, nice. And you were still boxing at that time. So were you doing your training camps there?
I made a comeback right around that time
Mhm.
and I told my wife I wanted to fight again. She looked at my belly and said, "Really?" We got a lot of work to do. Yeah, we sure do. So we went back to Winnipeg in 2000 and I fought more or less out of Winnipeg. I didn't train down here. I trained, you need boxing gyms. And back then there wasn't so much in Costa Rica, people my weight class and stuff. But it's come a long way. They've developed a couple champions here, and boxing's become a bigger thing.
Yeah. And how is the boxing scene there now, current day?
Well, like I say, they've garnered a few world champions, and it's fairly active now. But we're way out on the northwest coast, which is the main tourist area. But the boxing's mainly like closer to San Jose, where there's millions of people. It's a bigger city,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
boxing's not really near me, like 4 or 5 hours away. So I'm
I
not really involved here.
I got you. Yeah. And I actually just interviewed, the last interview I just did was with a Western Canadian boxer, Steve Claggett. And yeah, he's doing pretty good. He's got a fight coming up here in about a little less than 2 months. And we talked about growing up in Canada and the boxing scene there. Of course, you were a good bit before him. So how was the boxing scene growing up in Canada for you?
Well, when I grew up, really the only Canadian boxer anybody knew about was George Chuvalo, because he had fought Ali twice, Foreman, Frazier, everybody, heavyweight. And George had a great career. I mean, he never won a world title, but he came along at literally probably the strongest generation of heavyweight fighters ever. So George had a great career. But, generally speaking, Canadians were not considered a big threat to the boxing scene worldwide on a world championship level because we really had only had a few, and they were like the last light heavyweight champion before me was 75 years earlier or something. So I had a hard time breaking through for anybody to take me seriously because I was a white Canadian fighter, white being one constraint and Canadian being the other, because not many had succeeded a whole lot. So it was an interesting time for a up and coming Canadian fighter to drive into the States, into the inner cities gyms, and them all look at you and go, "Boy, in the wrong neighborhood, you get lost, you need directions. What are you doing here?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and although the boxing culture might not have been as strong in Canada growing up, you guys still have that tough nature. Obviously, hockey is the only sport really nowadays where you can still fight in like that kind of setting. So how was that growing up? Were you getting into fights out on the rink a lot?
Well, I grew up in hockey, but
Okay.
I was like a playmaker more
Okay.
than a fighter. And I did fight in hockey a few times because, you have to. But mainly I was one to score goals or make assists, and I was much more into that. Like I would win scoring races in my leagues and stuff. Hockey was my first love. I thought I would be a fighter. I also played lacrosse a little bit when I was younger. So I played the sports where it was fairly tough and really enjoyed the physicality of all those sports, I mean, when I grew up going to school, I would have to fight my way to school because I was Catholic and I had to cross the Protestants going to their school.
Yeah.
So there'd literally be lineups and it'd be the Catholics have to fight the Protestants.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a lot of fighting growing up. I mean, back then they didn't use guns, they used chains and knives and stuff like that. Gangs, that's what they would fight with. And I grew up in a poor part of Vancouver, East Vancouver, housing projects, so we would have to fight just to walk across from one side to the other, try to get to the store.
Mm.
So it was fairly physical growing up where I did.
Yeah.
And I liked it though. I guess because I grew up fighting, I didn't know any different. And then when I got in a boxing ring and all you could use is two hands, I thought, geez, this is easy. There's no bats coming at you, no chains, no belt buckles. It was just two hands. You just, wow, make a miss. That's all you got to do. This is fun.
Yeah. Plus, you got the gloves on, so you're not getting your eyes cut up as much sometimes. So
Right?
that's got to
Yeah,
be a little
hockey
better.
sticks in the
Right.
face, you know.
Right. Yeah. So take me through. You had a pretty short amateur career, right?
Yeah, well, my focus wasn't on amateur. I left school at 15. I left home at 15, minus 30 degrees, hitchhiked across the country to try and find somewhere warmer to be. And
So you actually hitchhiked?
yeah, at
Oh
15, I
wow.
hitchhiked. I'm like, I'm out of here. It was minus 30,
And this is
December.
East Vancouver.
Well, I was actually in Winnipeg at this point. My
Okay.
mother married another guy, so my stepfather was from Winnipeg, and we had moved there. And so I hitchhiked to Kitchener, which is where I was born, 1,200 miles. But it was minus 30. And I said, I would rather take my chances out in minus 30 than go back home to my mom because my stepfather was very violent.
Hmm.
And so she begged me not to, but I did. So I hitchhiked to Kitchener. And that's where I started fighting at that phase, boxing, because I was get a job, which I did, or fight for hopefully a much better life.
And where were you living when you hitchhiked there?
Well, I lived at my mom's and then I hitchhiked to my sister's
Okay. Okay.
in Kitchener.
Okay.
I hitchhiked to my father's, but he wasn't having any. He was like, no, when we leave home in our family, we go to work. So he was like, you got to go find a job. My sister took me in and went from there. But that's when I started fighting, and I literally started because I thought I had an opportunity to make a living boxing. So amateur wasn't a focus. I tried to turn pro without having an amateur fight, but the main event I was going to be the walkout bout, my pro debut, and the main event was so bad. Scott Ledoux fought Sylvester Wilder, I think the guy's name was, and he was ranked later that year by Ring Magazine as the worst heavyweight ever. And so in that fight, Scott Ledoux made a miss, and the guy went down. I mean, he missed a punch, and the guy went down. So the crowd was all booing and everything.
All right.
And the promoter said, "Donnie, we can't get to pull this fight off. They're going to kill me if I stay any longer. I'm leaving out the back door. You're going to have to fight later, another day." So I luckily it was good for me because I had 15 amateur fights.
Right. Yeah.
But
So you were actually you were slated to go and have your first pro fight without even having an amateur fight.
yes, yes.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, so you kind of fight your way through these. You said 16 amateur bouts?
15. I was 11-4.
Okay.
My last fight was amateur, was for the Canadian national team.
Hmm.
If I won, I was in the 1980 Olympics. It
Okay.
was in 1979. And I lost to Pat Fennell. He was a multi-time Canadian champion and Olympian. And after that fight, I just thought, let's just go pro. I'm not waiting until 84.
Right.
4 more years of this. I was
Sure.
20. I was ready.
Yeah. Okay. So 20 years old, you wrap up your final amateur fight. And at this point, you've been boxing, training boxing, like actually specifically for what, 5 years?
4 years, I would say.
Okay. And at this point, you're still working, you're still in Kitchener. And so you turned pro. And what were those early pro days like? And were you still at the same gym you had started at?
Well, I wasn't. I left the Kitchener gym because in Kitchener it was mainly amateur.
Hmm.
Lennox Lewis was training in that same gym at the same time.
Oh, wow.
A guy named Bob Prue who fought Leonard in the amateurs. Kitchener had quite a good team. And if I named off the guys and you look at their records, a lot of them went to like world title shots and stuff. So we had a very good team, but I wasn't into the amateur. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Winnipeg where there's more of a pro scene.
Mm.
And I had lived there because my stepfather was from there. So I went to Winnipeg and started fighting as a pro in 1980. And Winnipeg had quite a vibrant professional scene, not as much of an amateur scene. So I had experienced pros to box with. And there was a guy from Indianapolis who brought fighters from Indiana for the Winnipeg fight shows, quite often as opponents. But they had a gym down there, and Marvin Johnson was known to be like the toughest guy in boxing in a gym. Like he was ruthless and he would try and knock people out. And his theory was, it's my job to knock you out. If I'm not trying to knock you out, how are you going to learn? You
Right.
know, he's a two-time world champion.
Yeah.
So he was like really hard to box with sparring in the gym. So I thought that's the kind of guy I need. You know, if I don't have the amateur boxing, I need a guy who's known as the toughest guy in the gym.
Right.
So I drove to Indianapolis and more or less for the next 2 years lived there to spar with him and other people in that gym. It was a
And,
very well-known gym.
and what were those sparring matches like?
Hell, I mean, it was life and death is what it
Mm.
was like. And you know, they just believed that that was the best. There's different philosophies for sparring. Sparring can be like a very experienced guy sparring with a not very experienced guy, so he's teaching him kind of thing. You know, he's comfortable enough with himself that he'll teach the other guy. And then there's full out ego wars where you've got two young guys who don't know any better and they only know to go 100%. Or you've got a very experienced guy who wants to teach this young kid who's disrespecting other experienced guys that are maybe older. There's lots of head stuff going on in a boxing gym. It's not just everybody there to help everybody, or not just everybody there to hurt everybody. And there's a
Right.
lot in between all of those things. And there is a lot of both of those. So I was very fortunate in that, first of all, I had good defense. So no matter how good you were, you might miss. And if you miss, I'm going to hit you. And I knew how to punch well because I was very damaged physically from hockey and stuff. So I had to be very precise with my punches. So I learned how to punch in between people's punches, which is a difficult time to get hit. When you're throwing a punch and somebody makes you miss and then hits you, quite often you don't see that punch coming
Mm.
because you just missed. You're not seeing the counter. And that's when you hurt people more is when you hit them when they don't see it. The brain doesn't have a chance to set up for the punch.
Right.
So you hurt people more if they don't see the punch coming. So I was very fortunate in that I had a unique style that A made somebody miss and then B made you pay for trying to hit me. And so even against the best guys, like I boxed Marvin Johnson in that gym and other very good fighters. Frank Minton I can name as one, but there are many, many in Indianapolis in the gym at that time. It was an inner city gym, police athletic league gym. Like, I mean, like I was the only white guy around. You know, there was me and whoever came with me, and that was it. They literally said, "You guys come to the wrong part of town. What are you doing here? You need to. Where would you like? Where are you trying to get to?" I said, "I came here to box Marvin Johnson." And they're like, "What?" Okay, and the whole gym went quiet, and we boxed, and it was very quiet until I hit him with the right hand, and all of a sudden, oh wow, this kid can fight, you know. And then it was a war. Then it was on for a couple of years.
Yeah. And so you said about hockey, you were banged up a little bit from hockey, and I saw that you had gone into a big fight. I can't remember, I think it was the NABF title fight, and you had had like a completely broken knuckle, and then your shoulder had like popped out of place from years of hockey. So what was that like, kind of that experience of you just popping your shoulder back into place, fighting hurt?
Yeah, in 1982, I boxed a guy in Minneapolis, his hometown, after we had fought in Winnipeg, my hometown. And he was the first guy to take me 8 rounds because I would knock out most people,
Mm.
except for the one guy I lost to, and then I knocked him out in the rematch. That was my fourth and fifth fight. This guy was a little bit after that. And we had gone 8 rounds. And I mean, I hit him with everything. And I thought, this guy is just impossible to knock out. Big, strong guy. But so I fought him in a rematch in his hometown. And in the first round, my left shoulder went out. It was literally out, and I couldn't put it back in. And I kept trying to put it back in, but it was just extremely painful. So all I could do is throw with my right hand. And that round, second round started. And luckily, I made him miss a couple punches and then threw the right hand over top. And my right hand just exploded
Mm.
because it was such a hard punch right on his forehead. And all I thought while I was looking down, all I could think of is what can I hit him with next? Like an elbow, a headbutt, what? I mean, I don't know what you do next when you got no left hand. My left hand couldn't lift up, and my right hand was so much pain. And luckily, I looked up, and every time his heart beat, blood was spurting all over the
Oh
ring out
my
of his eye.
gosh.
Yeah, I sliced his eye with that punch, luckily. And so I got out of that fight. And another time I broke my left hand in the first round, and in the second round I broke my right hand. So, and that was a 10-round fight on ESPN. Years later, Al Bernstein, when he was being inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame, he was up there on the stage being inducted, and I was like, "Ow, ow!" Like, what, Donnie? I'm like, if you were such a great announcer, you would have recognized that I had two broken hands, and it could have been a very dramatic fight. Instead, you said it was the most boring fight of the year on ESPN because you didn't realize I had a broken hand and a separated shoulder, which would have made it a dramatic fight.
Right.
But anyway, instead it was a boring fight. It was boring because I couldn't do anything except for be defensive and score points.
Yeah.
So I won the fight on a decision, but no, I had some crazy days with, I mean, I fought Bobby Chaz with a broken forearm,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, stuff
Right.
like that. I mean, but I'm sure other guys had their own challenges too. Like, I'm not the only fighter who went into the ring kind of beat up.
So I saw you said you fought him with a broken forearm. There was a UFC fighter a couple years ago I watched. He's still fighting to this day. He's an absolute animal. He's known just for gutting out tough wins. And he had broken kind of like his forearm, maybe it was his wrist, but that area, and he got smashed by a head kick. And they asked him later on, about the head kick and how he was able to recover from it. And he said he actually saw the head kick coming, but when he went to put his arm up, it just didn't move. So was it kind of like that same situation for you? Was it just hard to move, control it? Like what was that like?
Well, when I had the broken forearm, I mean, I was pretty stubborn. I'm pretty stubborn and I'm pretty non-medical system. So when I broke my forearm, my manager said, we have to go to the doctors and get x-rays because your arm's swollen from your wrist to your elbow, black and blue. And I was like, yeah, I know, but it's just a bruise. Don't worry. It's okay. It's fine. We're going to be fine. And I just fought through it. It was extremely painful when it would get hit, of course, quite a bit because of the swelling. But for me, I never wanted to be the guy who like pulled out of fights because of an injury.
Right.
I always had injuries. It's just, I guess, the way I was built or what the sports I had done before boxing set me up for some recurring injuries. Like I tore my rotator cuff playing hockey, not from boxing originally. So that just, boxing's a tough one on a rotator cuff that's already been torn twice and had a screw put in it. I couldn't even, my arm was like this at one point in my career. That's all I could do with my left. So I just loved boxing so much that I would find a way to work around whatever injury it was. I used my feet well, kind of like trick guys. It was such a head game for me.
Yeah.
It was like playing chess. Like, look at this one over here, pop.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
So if you had to kind of define your style in one of the major known styles, what would you kind of put it as?
Well, I've been called unorthodox by a lot of writers.
Hmm.
So I think that's pretty consistent. But I was a boxer puncher. I was a counter puncher. I boxed, but I would count, like I said, make a miss and then counter punch. And that's really the only way I could do it because I had to hit you somewhere soft on your face. If I hit you on a cheekbone, like I hit Leonard, or a forehead, I would hurt my hand as much or more than it would hurt you because I had split lining in my joint. So I had nothing to protect the nerve in my right hand because it was broken in so many places on the index knuckle that the middle knuckle protruded and
Huh.
that would hit everything. And so it split that lining in that joint. And so it was, it was a lot of pain. And when you hit a nerve, it goes all the way up and down your back and into your head and everything. So my right hand was very challenging. I had to be very careful where I hit people. So when I would hit you, then that point, you know, people would just go down or out or whatever. And the left shoulder, I had to be very, very careful with because it would pop out and it would cause a lot of pain. And I only had certain angles I could work it with. So yeah, it was a real head game for me. And for me, boxing was more mental than physical.
So that's interesting. I read an article that had described your style almost as like an awkward style that could overwhelm opponents because they weren't used to seeing it. So are you kind of saying that like your injuries almost shaped your style to an extent?
For sure it did. Yeah. The injuries defined what my options were, as far as how I could get into land and get out without getting hit,
Yeah.
because when you have injuries on the offense, you really can't afford many injuries on the defense, like in other words, cuts, mental distortion from getting hit, effects of getting hit deter your capacity physically to be offensive.
Right.
My offense had to be very refined and sharp. So I couldn't afford to be damaged from injuries on a defense. So my defense had to be good, number one. And then my offense had to be effective, number two.
Would Yeah. So would you say if you had to pick like just a natural gift of yours that helped you in boxing, would you say it was toughness?
Well, that was certainly part of it, but I'm going to say probably instinct,
Okay.
reflex, timing, understanding. I had a high boxing IQ in the sense that I understood boxing well from early. A guy would throw a perfectly straight, beautiful jab. And to me, that was so easy to work from, off of. Okay, great. Like I would literally put my hands down and ask them to throw that jab.
Yeah.
'Cause I can move. He's extended and I can just pop him with my jab or come over top with the right hand or step over there and make him miss by a lot, get into his head a little bit, tap him a couple times with my limited left hand, kind of like, get in their head. So then all of a sudden they're trying harder or showing their punches a little more, and then you're getting in between them. It was really a mental game more than physical.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about as far as like telegraphing punches goes. I mean, that's in almost every sport where you're going against another guy, even in team sports or mano a mano. There's a big mental game. And so would you say that came from like watching film and just years of fighting, or did that feel more instinctual to you?
For me, it was instinctual again. And as you said succinctly, from the injuries, it defined what options I had. So because I'm injured, I have to make you miss first. So I have to put myself out there to where you think you can land. So by doing that, that defined my style. Like I was okay, my hands were down, they weren't up. People would say, why is he his hands down so low? If my hands were up, you've got four different places you might hit, right? Even more. There's the middle five places. And I don't know what you're gonna do. I learned from Ali. He said I'd put my hands down and I knew they weren't going to try and hit my belly
Right, yeah.
because it's wide open,
Right.
you know. So I would do that. I would put my hands down. It's just like, come on, hit me in the face. Because when you reach for I can easily move one side or the other and counter one side or the other. So I'm
Mm,
kind of setting you up by leaving myself open.
right.
But then you have to have, good reflexes and timing of your punch.
Mm, yeah. Yes.
Lots. Footwork is important, very important.
Right. So during this time in your early pro career, were you telling people like, "Hey, I'm going to be the next champ"? And if you were they hearing it, or how was that?
After one fight, I said, my goal is to become world champion.
Mm,
In between my first and second fight, I had a very unique opportunity, which was to box Tommy Hearns
mm,
in an exhibition, not in a gym, not in a real fight, but in an exhibition at a boxing event, like a full boxing card. And we were put as an exhibition to raise money for Ralph Racine, who had been put in a coma
Hmm.
in a fight by Gag. He was fighting a guy named Gaetan Hart, former Canadian champion and known Canadian fighter. So, because he had fought Hilmer Kenty, Tommy Hearns's stablemate, and did such a heroic job, though he lost, the Kronk boxing team fell in love with this kid and he got hurt in his next fight. So they wanted to help him raise money. So they were looking for somebody in Canada who would box Tommy Hearns to raise money for this guy. I overheard the promoter talking about it on the phone. And I said, "Hey, hold on," because he had said, uh, Emmanuel Stewart, Hearns's man trainer,
Right.
Emmanuel, Emmanuel, there's nobody in Winnipeg stupid enough to box Tommy Hearns, let alone Canada. And I heard him say that, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
stop!"
yeah. Right here.
I'm like, "What? Hold on, Donnie. I'm talking to manager." I said, "I know who you're talking to. I'll box Tommy Hearns." He goes, "What? Hold on, I found somebody." So I boxed him after one fight. This is it right here. I don't know if you can see this. That's me in the
Oh
ring
yeah.
and me in the corner.
That's
So
sweet.
he caught me with the right hand, put me on a knee. He was 28 wins, zero losses, 26 knockouts. I was one win, zero losses. And he had a storied amateur career, and I had mine. So, of course, everybody thought he was going to destroy me. And Tommy didn't play boxing. Kronk was kind of like the Marvin Johnson's gym. You
Yeah.
fought hard, famously. So he hit me once with the right hand, and my right knee hit the ground, which is called a knockdown. I got right up and kept going, so it wasn't actually a knockdown, but it was. And I had him right once with the right hand and put his butt on the bottom ropes, which technically is a knockdown. So we were 1-1. We each dropped each other once. So it was quite a exhibition. And afterwards, Gil Clancy, who was Muhammad Ali's former guy and a very well known and respected boxing guy back in the day, he said, "I've never seen anyone who can counterpunch or who has lateral movement like Lalonde since Emil Griffith, 5-time world champion." And that was after one fight, and it was in the newspapers. And so I was like, geez, maybe I should be paying even more attention to the sport. And the people I worked for the city of Winnipeg at the time, and the people I worked with were, "Donnie, what the hell are you doing?" When I came back to work the next day, like, you just need to get out there and fight. I mean, you're
Yeah.
like, people are talking about you should be ranked in the top 10. You've only had one fight. You just boxed Tommy Hearns. Get out there. So I quit my job that day and went full time into boxing.
Nice.
April 1980, I think it was. But that didn't bring me a whole bunch of money. So it was a tough few years just fighting and getting by, doing odd jobs. But it was the Hearns exhibition that made me really think I need to go 100% full into boxing.
Yeah. So the second fight of your career, essentially, you get to fight the Hitman. But this is essentially entrenched in the Four Kings era, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, at that point, Ray Leonard had just beat Duran
Okay.
for, or yeah, the first fight, right? Duran won the first fight. Duran beat Leonard in 50-round decision, first fight.
Yeah.
So this is 1980. So they had just had their fight. But anyway, then Hearns and Leonard fought the next year. And then Leonard and Benitez, and then Hagler and Hearns and Hagler and Leonard. And yeah, but it was the beginning of it all. It was like when these guys were like, like I said, 28-0, 26 knockouts. 2 months, Tommy was 2 months away from winning his first world title.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy. That is
yeah.
insane. And like you said too, even though it's an exhibition, he's not like a guy that like bobs and weaves. I mean, he was still going in there.
There was no playing. It was intense.
Yeah. So now at this point in your career, you only got technically one official win under your belt, but you, I'm sure, have all the confidence in the world. You
Right.
quit your job. So take me through these next like 10, 15 fights and what you were learning during all this and what that experience was like.
Well, a lot of the fights when you're young and up and coming, someone has to pay for your fights unless you're selling a whole bunch of tickets coming out of the amateurs, have a big name like Ray did or something like that. So, the fights were, I didn't have anybody like you asked about. I didn't have anybody who thought that this white kid was going to be the next world champion out of Canada. So I didn't really have anybody behind me, so to speak. So I would have to fight whoever they would bring, you know. And I started fighting in Winnipeg. And in Winnipeg at that time, boxing was controlled more or less from, one generation or one arm of mafia control out of Montreal,
Right.
the Keown family. And the guy in Winnipeg was Tommy Burns. The guy was on the phone when I heard him talking about Burns and Hearns. And there was a guy there named Kenny Dusang that I understood to be kind of like the guy. And he came to me and he said, "You need to sign this contract and fight for us, or you're not going to be fighting in Canada because we control boxing." And so I ended up more or less in the middle of a little bit of discomfort for a while with boxing, and I would go on the road and fight in the States. I'd go down to Kitchener or Toronto and fight there. I wasn't really able to fight out of Winnipeg some of my early fights because I was kind of against the mainstream boxing circle, which was these people, and I didn't want to become part of that. Ultimately, I did. I signed with them and had one fight with them. They put me in a tough fight in Winnipeg, but the judge is against me. He got the decision. Then we fought a rematch. I knocked him out. That was my first loss, my fifth fight. And I beat him in the sixth fight in my rematch. That's when I first broke my hand, was the first fight. And then they put me in a fight in Montreal against the guy who had like 35 fights and I had five. And Montreal was his hometown. I was there to lose. It was a
Right.
sold out hockey arena, 12,000 people. And I was supposed to. Gaetan Hart was the main event, the guy who injured Ralph Racine, hurt
Okay.
Ralph Racine,
Yeah.
put him in a coma. And then I was on the card to be knocked out and shut up because they wanted to control boxing without this flyer guy because they had a kid in boxing, their son, David Dusang, good kid, good boxer. They wanted him to be the rising star of Winnipeg, not me. So they put me in this fight in Montreal for me to get knocked out and knocked the guy out dead face first in the second round. And so I knocked him out in his hometown in Montreal in front of them and their audience. And so they were like, "Okay, Donnie, you can be on our team now. We're going to put you in fights you should win, and we're going to take care of you, bring you up to championships." And I said, "No, you're not. I'm not doing anything with you guys. I'll do my own thing. I'll move to the States." And then I left and went to Indianapolis
Uh,
to stay out of their way kind of thing.
eh,
But I would still fight in Winnipeg from time to time because they kind of needed me. I sold tickets,
right.
but they didn't want me. So they put me in fights that, it was a strange time early in my career for that reason. And then eventually, I had a guy who believed in me take me under his wing in Winnipeg and fight them. And through him, I got a Canadian national, a fight for the Canadian championship.
Mm.
And I was number one in Canada. The commission, mafia control, said I should never fight the Canadian champion because I'm not qualified. I will get hurt. I might get killed. It'd be bad for boxing. They should never sanction that fight. That's the Winnipeg Boxing Commission.
Right.
They were calling to never sanction that fight, so they wouldn't. So I went to Toronto and the Ontario Boxing Commission, Clyde Gray, former number one contender in the world, but he was at this point the boxing commissioner in Ontario. So he sanctioned the fight with me and Roddy McDonald. And I did
Okay.
it in my hometown of Kitchener and Wilfrid Laurier University on national television because this guy who got behind me knew how to do television. Got money for sponsorship from Molson's, bought the TV time, and he produced the show of me fighting for Roddy. The Canadian TV didn't buy it. We bought the time and put it on, produced it. And so on national television, I got to fight Roddy McDonald, who was 23-1, 21 knockouts, like certainly a big knockout guy,
Right.
number 10 in the world. And I was not expected to win that fight. Like nobody thought I was winning that fight. George Chuvalo was the commentator for the show. It was a big deal in Canada. And I ended up basically shutting him out and knocking him out in the 10th round. I mean, he hit me. He was a really hard puncher. He hit me once, and one side of my head was rattling for like minutes, like really fast. And the other side was calm, luckily.
What
And
the?
wow, I can't let this guy hit me again. you know. But anyway, it was a good fight. Went 10 rounds. They stopped it after 10 rounds. And I won the Canadian title. So that was a huge victory for me to do not only in Canada, but to do in Canada with these guys threatening my life. They literally came, threatened my life numerous times. Like, the police came to me at post-fight parties saying that a hit's been put on your life from Montreal. We got to protect you. You're coming to the hotel with us. And they put me in a hotel room and had guards around my room. I went out the back window and went back to the party and just said, they're not doing that to me. You know, I'm just a fighter. You guys know boxing. You're involved in boxing. You always have been. I'm just a fighter. Just leave me alone. And they did.
Wow.
Luckily. Yeah.
That actually that perfectly excuse me, that perfectly segues kind of into a little question I had before we get into the further fights. I was going to ask you was I read a book recently and kind of the same thing, except it was like the Italian mafia had confronted this guy about a fight. Were you ever seriously scared that they would, even if they weren't threatening to kill you, did you ever go into a fight kind of nervous that they had potentially tampered with judges or match fixed, or was that never really a concern?
Well, like I said, they did do that for my fifth fight. The other guy
Right, where you
got
said the judges kind of gave you the poor
well,
deal.
gave him the decision.
Right,
The judge,
right,
that's the one I lost. Yeah.
right.
And so that was one I was already concerned about. That was only my fifth fight. But a big one was so after all of this stuff happened and I defied the mafia, they came to me and offered me that they would take care of me and I'd be one of them. And I said, I'm not one of you guys. I'm just like a guy on the street who wants to be a fighter. I'm not a mafia guy. I'm never going to be a mafia guy. I'm just a normal guy. I don't want to be a part of that. No. I said, I'm just going to do my thing. I'll move to the States. I won't fight in Canada. But then I signed with IMG, like literally the biggest sports management company in the world. And the only fighter they had ever worked with previous to me was Muhammad Ali. So it was a huge thing that they signed me. And then they wanted to put a fight on in Winnipeg. And I told them, I said, I just got to tell you, there's this little thing on the side with these mafia people that
Yeah,
they tell me I'm not allowed to fight in Canada. They're like, ah, come on, we're a big company. We're the biggest sports man. They have Tiger Woods. Anybody who's anybody, Wayne Gretzky, they were their agents. So they said, they're not going to mess with us. I said, well, they're not threatening you. They're threatening me. So anyway, they put a fight on in Winnipeg. And the night before the fight, it's my last fight with Teddy Atlas. I'm sitting with my manager watching the New York Mets World Series. It's like November 1st or 2nd, 86. I get a phone call in the room. Donny, it's Kenny. I'm like, hey, Kenny, how you doing? He goes, Kenny Dusang. I said, I know who you are. Well, you remember our deal. Yeah, I remember our deal. And I'm like, yeah, Kenny, I remember our deal. And he goes, so you're not fighting tomorrow night. I go, well, yeah, I got to fight tomorrow night. These guys told me I need to, and everything's going to be okay. And well, I'm telling you, everything's not going to be okay. You know. So they threatened my life that night and said, we will have somebody at your door if you don't tell us you're not going there tomorrow. So I looked at my manager and he goes, fuck them, tell them fuck themselves. The World Series is on. Do they not have any respect for sports? The World Series is on. We're watching the World Series. I'm like, oh my God, are you crazy? But he was crazy. He was maybe crazier than me. So anyway, they were good enough and sort of, I guess, in a sense, honored the old, you know, as a fighter. And they wanted to, I guess they just didn't go there.
yeah,
For whatever reason, God willing, I was able to survive that and they didn't come kill me. But
yeah.
going into the ring, I was definitely thinking, all right, you never know.
This
This
could be
guy,
it.
yeah.
Well, I mean, and you also you mentioned Teddy Atlas. you didn't just have the mafia after you, of course. What came out in his book, of course. I mean, like, come on, what are we doing here? And
I
so you spent obviously a considerable amount of time with him. A, did that surprise you? And B, did he kind of have that nature about him in other aspects of his life where like just this total control?
Yeah, that's what didn't work between him and I, is he was very, I would say, militaristic in his thinking, where he tells you what to do and he tells you how it is and blah, 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 which is fine. I mean, you got to respect the person teaching you
Right.
to a degree. You know, when you start talking to me disrespectfully, like I'm a piece of garbage, I no longer can respect that or you. And so he had had that kind of experience. From my understanding, people told me directly themselves. Shannon Briggs,
Shannon Briggs, Shannon the Can.
Shannon Briggs, yeah. He worked with Donny Poole, another Canadian fighter who was not a world champion, Canadian champion, but he worked with my same manager before me. And Donnie and Teddy had the same kind of falling out. I had heard stories about Teddy. Teddy told me stories about him pulling a gun on people, Hector Camacho in the gym in New York, or him having a fight with a crowbar with one of the trainers, Hender Roca, because they got to fight. Teddy was a hothead, you know. And I mean, I liked Teddy in the end as a fighter. With him as a trainer, it didn't work for me. The time I spent with him was one of the worst years of my boxing career. If you look at it, I was with him from October 95 to October 96, 1 year. And I didn't fight anybody very good in that year because I wasn't fighting well. And my manager kept saying, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "This is just not working out with Teddy." And I said, "I know. I don't want to train with him." I said, he's destroying me mentally. I had all these injuries because psychologically, all I could think about was the negative he would say. And so then I got with Bobby Cassidy, who's a hugely positive person
Hmm.
and a very knowledgeable person. And Tommy Gallagher and him worked together. And Tommy Gallagher in New York, Gold Gloves champion, but he had his own gym in Queens Boys Club. And Tommy was a huge cheerleader type and was a huge motivator and uplifting guy. So between these two guys, between giving me an education on certain things that Bobby had experience in, he was number one in the world as light heavyweight under Bob Foster's reign, and so he never got a shot, but he was a great fighter. And Tommy Gallagher also had his experience in the ring and also was a great motivator. These guys took me from literally a low to a world champion in a year. I
Hmm.
mean, when I was 10 months before I fought for the world title, I had 6 specialists in New York, medical specialists, who diagnosed my injuries independently, 6 separate ones. Every one of them were career ending injuries. So I had 6 career ending injuries at the same time, leaving Teddy Atlas. And I was told by the doctors, "You'll never fight again. Stop. You're done." My manager got me a fight in the Ivory Coast of Africa,
Hmm.
fighting Jean-Marie Amibi, a contender of the 70s. That if I fought, I would get 150 grand. My manager wouldn't take any money, but that was my retirement because I couldn't train him. The doctor said I'm done. That was 10 months before I won a world title. And I was only 5 months before I fought Mustafa Hamsho in the Garden in a huge, the winner got the world title fight because Michael Spinks at that point had given up his belts after beating Larry Holmes. So it was in 85, 86. Now we're into 87. So I got this huge opportunity by just staying the course. And I knew now I was into natural medicine and I always had been. And I had this saint come into my life, Vibeke Johnson from Denmark, who with their hands could heal most things that I had problems with, at least to get me into the gym. And I told her that my manager wanted me to retire. She said, "I know a guy in Denmark who might be able to fix all your injuries. Let's get him here." So we brought him to New York and he said he could fix them, but he needed time and money because he had a whole practice. He had to hire someone to run in Denmark while he was in New York fixing me. So anyway, we got him to stay. My manager wouldn't hire him. My manager didn't believe in any of it. He said, no, no, the doctor said you're retired. You're retired. I'm not wasting money on some kook who says he can fix you with his hands. But this guy had to get through to my manager, and my manager wasn't listening. So he said, does he have a daughter? Does he have any siblings? And I said, he has a daughter. Do you have a picture of her? Yeah. So I showed him a picture. He goes, okay, get him on the phone. So I get him on the phone. I said, Dave, Ken's right here to talk. I don't want to talk about it. Give him the phone. Ken's like, so Dave, tell me about you and Laura, your daughter. And he gets into personal stuff that they had experienced together, father daughter. And my manager's just screaming his head off. I could hear him on the phone. Who the fuck are you? How do you know this stuff? No, 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 going on and on and on. And Ken was like, I know it by looking at a picture of your daughter. Donnie doesn't know any of this to tell me. I didn't know anything
Wow.
that he was talking about. He
Wow.
said, the picture of your daughter tells me everything. So my manager gets on the phone and he was like livid, wouldn't listen. But then the guy started doing some work on me and fixed a couple things. And all of a sudden, I'm back in the gym in a couple days doing stuff with my body that were impossible 2 days earlier, and finally got my manager's attention. Well, that phone call really got his attention because he was
Right.
literally explaining the guy's life with his daughter from a picture. So he woke him up. And then I started showing him some physical challenge accomplishments the guy made on fixing my body. And so we hired the guy. And within 5 months, I beat Hampshire at the Garden and world title elimination fight, and then beat Eddie Davis. And that was an enormous transition from where I was at with Teddy. So Teddy never understood, because when I left Teddy was 1986, November. When I fought Leonard and got that money that Teddy felt he would deserve part of, that was 2 years later.
Right.
That was after I beat Hamsho. Eddie Davis, who Michael Spink still today says is the hardest fight he ever had. And so I knocked Eddie out in 1 round in 30 seconds. That's when I won the world title. Then I fought Leslie Stewart and beat him. Leslie Stewart knocked out Marvin Johnson, the guy I moved to Indiana to fight. Leslie Stewart knocked out Marvin in the same arena, outdoors soccer stadium in Trinidad. Like you could not believe how hot it was.
And that was your
But
first title fight, right? Was in
that was my
Trinidad?
title defense. I won it fighting Eddie Davis in Trinidad.
In Trinidad, though. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
And then I defended it fighting Leslie Stewart in May in Trinidad on the equator, the hottest time of the year, the most humid time of the year. The exact same ring Marvin Johnson was knocked out in the fifth round by Leslie Stewart. I knocked out Leslie Stewart in the fifth round. So
yeah,
you think how that wasn't huge for me, like enormous.
yeah.
So anyway, that all happened after Teddy Atlas.
Right, right.
Then the Leonard fight happened. And
And he was still ate up about it.
he's still stuck 2 years back,
Yeah,
like he's owed something because of something he did. He had nothing to do with those successes.
yeah.
The four biggest, most relevant fights of my career happened after him,
Mm,
in spite of him, because
right,
of Bobby and Teddy and what they did for me.
right. And,
And
and
of course, the healing and stuff.
if you don't mind, I mean, that's an insane story. Of course, this guy did worked wonders for you. I mean, this was back in the late 80s. What was he doing at that time?
He called it psychoneuromyofascial integration.
Mm,
So psychological,
right,
neurological, myofascial, which means in the fascia, which is what all your nerves run in,
right.
and it's all integrated, he's saying. So the very first thing he did to me to try to get through to my managers, I would have migraines. And it's impossible to be a major fighter with migraines because you can run a whole event around the fighter and they wakes up with a migraine that. So he's like, listen, Donnie, I'm gonna get intense here. You're gonna lie down like kind of like child's pose, down on the ground with your knees like this,
Right.
knees up, and you're lying on the ground with your back facing up.
Mm,
And he took his elbow to the lower part of my back, where the muscle runs all the way along your spine, and very, very deeply dug in there with
mm,
his elbow. And it was extremely painful. you can imagine, and tight muscles, blockages and stuff, working through it all. And it was very, very, very painful. So I'm like screaming from pain. He hit me in the neck, got to my neck, and I started having a visual, like a very clear visual, like you were seeing me and I'm seeing right now, of myself as a 12-year-old looking at my stepfather who has my mother on the ground, his knees on her shoulders, and he's punching her in the face. She's unconscious. And I jump on his back. He flips me over, punches me. I fly against the wall, slide down the wall, and that stops the fight. But this whole visual is coming through my mind while this guy's holding this spot in my neck where my migraines would come from. And I'm literally start bawling my eyes out. I go from like screaming like, ouch, I'm in pain, to boo-hooing. And he's like, geez, Donny, I understand you're a tough guy, number one in the world. You're probably embarrassed. You're crying in front of a man you just barely met. He goes, but I want you to understand I'm on this point for a reason. I'm going to stay here and I want you to stay in that emotion. Just stay where you are and experience whatever you experience. So I experienced this whole thing and I'm bawling my eyes out like a baby. And then he goes, okay, we're going to pull off now. We're going to get out now. And he takes his elbow off my neck and the pressure's off and I release. And I've never had a migraine since that day.
Oh my gosh, dude.
I have them all the time. Yeah.
Wow.
So he was saying that experience was psychologically integrated into that musculature, that part of my body. And until I re-experienced it, understood it from a different perspective, didn't carry the same emotion, fear and hurt. Because like I said to him, he said, now let me tell you what you experienced before I said anything about what I was seeing. He said, I'm going to say you're between 11 and 13 years old, and a male figure in your life hurts you. And he hurt you physically, but it wasn't the physical thing that hurt you. What really hurt you was the psychological part. Because he was my stepfather, and I'd really fallen in love with this guy. He took me hunting, fishing, coached my hockey team. We were very close. But he had this complete freak out on my mom when they were fighting, and then this happened. So it hurt me more emotionally that this man that I've let my heart go to again hurt me like my real father had years earlier when he left. He didn't leave me, but I took it as he left me. So this was a very painful emotional experience. And that's what he means by psychoneuromyofascial integration. He's saying all of your experiences are integrated into our body unless we go through an experience to emotionally release them. And the only way to do that is through certain means. And this was one of them. So he called his work psychoneuromyofascial integration. But years later, another guy came up with work that just incredibly ironically I connected with. His name is Mike Leahy. He invented a work called active release technique. But active release technique actively, in other words, you go to those points where you're holding on to something or an old injury is unreleased. And with active release, he gets to that point of the musculature. You actively move it and he pushes through it like the other guy was doing, but only you're actively involved and consciously involved. And his doesn't have the psychological part, but they're working out the physical part.
Wow.
The active release technique is a very, very powerful rehabilitation thing that most people don't know about because the medical profession doesn't promote it because you don't take pills or get surgeries. But it is a thing and it's an incredibly fast way to heal connective tissue injuries. But anyway, I could tell you crazy stories about that.
I
But
mean, this is crazy stuff. I want to come back to this definitely at the end, revisit it. But yeah, this is insane stuff, dude. I mean, like you said, you have this clear picture almost of that whole situation.
reliving of it, a complete reliving of it. Like it was as visual as you can imagine. I just saw the whole thing happen. And at that point, I'm an adult watching this kind of dysfunctional thing happening in a home You know what I mean? It was me, but it was me seeing it from a different perspective. So I was able to rationalize it, intellectualize it, um, acknowledge it for what it was, and let it go.
Mm,
Whereas previous to that, it was this little boy who was hurt by a man that he loved. And it was just confusion and pain.
mm,
But as I saw it from a different perspective as an adult, I was able to rationalize it, intellectualize it, and let it go. So it was no longer in my body. So I never
right.
had migraines again. So
Yeah.
the same guy did the same thing with all six injuries. Tennis elbow. My knuckle had the lining was torn, which prevented it from protecting the nerve.
Mm,
And that's why I had nerve pain in my right hand whenever I would land it incorrectly, so to speak, on something hard. So it was always swollen from training, and always I had a pad made, but that diminished it. But like, I mean, I was training with Teddy Atlas, for example, boxing freaking monsters. I ran Barkley every day, but all kinds of monsters, big, great fighters in Montreal, in New York. And my hand's like swollen like a balloon. And he's like, "Oh, it's all in your head." I'm like, "No, Teddy, this is not my head, my
right.
hand. See how swollen it is? You see how bruised it is? See how hard it is for me to make a fist? Well, if I box again today when I can't make a fist, I'm going to damage it more." He was literally like trying to tell me that I wasn't hurt. Say what you want, and I will box them. And I did. But I have injuries, and he didn't care what, didn't matter what the doctor said, what anybody said. So yeah, so this one day I was walking to train, and I can't remember the kid's last name now, but it was Steve, 260-pound heavyweight, trained with Steve, Teddy. With Teddy, because like I said, he's militaristic. When you see him, you got to shake his hand, you got a firm handshake, and look him in the eye, and this kind of stuff. And so his fighters were all the same. We were all, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" And so we shake each other's hand. And I was on the road. I had just boxed. I ran Barkley the night before. My hand was really swollen. I was going back to box with him again. And I'm walking on the street, and Steve was walking, huge heavyweight guy. And he goes, "Hey, Donny, how you doing?" He goes down to shake my hand and literally just crushed my hand.
Oh
My hand
God.
just crushed, and I fell to the cement. And like I was literally on the cement. I go, "Oh, Steve, let go of my freaking hand." And he goes, "Oh, what's the matter?" I go, "What do you mean?" Yeah, like, yeah. Anyway, so I
Yeah.
go to the gym, and Teddy goes to shake my hand like really tough like that again. And I pulled back, and he goes, "What the F's the matter with you? Are you some freaking pussy? Are you a woman?" I goes screaming at me in front of the whole gym. I'm like, "Teddy, you can't see my hand, how swollen it is, how purple it is." "Yeah, I'm injured.
Right.
You can't squish my hand
Right.
before sparring. How's that?" This kind of stuff. And it was that crazy. But Ken fixed that. He fixed everything.
Now, were you having these kind of like very visceral experiences every time he worked on you in those injuries?
Well, it would be different, of course. So some things are just physical. There's not psychological element to it.
Right, right.
Like my knees. I didn't know how to run. I ran however back then there was no internet. So you would like buy a boxing magazine or a Runner's World or something. So I mean, I ran how I ran, and it hurt my knees. I mean, my knees were so bad. By the time I was 25, I couldn't run. I could just do stairs. I couldn't do flat ground. I was in too much pain. But through Ken's work, which was on my psoas muscle,
Right.
but Ken taught me about that, taught me how to fix it. He fixed it with his, I mean, like hours in a sauna with him doing deep tissue body work and me screaming of pain. He eventually fixed it. And I ran a marathon in '07 and a marathon in '09, 87 and '89. I ran marathons.
Wow.
Before that, I couldn't run. I would cry when I was running because it hurt so much pain. But when he fixed my legs, I could run like crazy. You know. So
That's remarkable. I mean, that is insane. And is he, I mean, I'm sure he's still probably, is he still practicing today or do you know?
he passed away.
Hmm.
And he died, the person who did the autopsy said they've never seen a body with more disease in it.
Than
Because
his?
when you're doing that kind of work, he worked on all kinds of people, cancer, MS, all kinds of stuff. And when I, let's say I'm working on you and I get to a point where you have a real big blockage and you have to move that energy out. Energy doesn't start and end. It changes form, but it always exists. So if I'm moving that energy out of your body and you're not breathing effectively, the energy's got to go somewhere, so it goes to me. It either goes out you or in me, but it goes somewhere because I'm forcing it through the pressure on that part of your body to go somewhere. So a lot of times it would go into him. And he would mentally try to be there and exhale and let it all out, let it just flow through him and out of him. But inevitably, he would collect some of everybody's everything. And he had more diseases and to worse degrees than this doctor had ever seen in any other body. Because he literally took it out of you if you
Wow.
didn't let it go. Yeah, so he really sacrificed himself for his clients, literally.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in the physical sense. And geez, man, I mean, I wasn't expecting that. Might have to have you on again in the future and talk about just like this kind of stuff because this is super, super interesting stuff. But trying to maybe get back onto the boxing, your career here. So he comes in and he kind of changes your trajectory of your career. You get away from Atlas. I mean, you're with some new trainers, new guys, and you have your first title win and then your first title defense. And then soon enough, you get the Leonard call. Take me through that fight and that whole process.
Well, it wasn't really a call for Leonard, it was us pursuing the fight. My management team put that fight together. Ray was looking for an opponent, the right opponent for his comeback. And my guy was just brilliant and he got right on top of that and put it all together. David Wolf is my manager's name. He did a great job. Tommy Gallagher was very influential in putting that fight together. He was my trainer, but he also helped put that fight together. He was close to the Leonard people. And one day I walked into the gym, Queens Boys Club. Tommy Gallagher goes, "Come here, let's go. We got to go downstairs and talk about something." So we go down there. He goes, "I got to tell you something. You can't tell anybody." No, 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 no. Yeah, yeah. He goes, "So answer one question for me." So what's that? And he goes, "Would you fight Ray Leonard for $1 million?" And remember, I'm a light heavyweight. Michael Spinks was light heavyweight champion. Ray Leonard was middleweight champion. And I'm thinking, Ray Leonard. I was thinking maybe Michael Spinks or one of those great light heavyweights, Michael Moore, Virgil Hill, one of the light heavyweights is what I was thinking about. And he goes, "No, Ray Leonard." I said, "I can't get that welterweight or a middleweight." He goes, "No, he'll come up to you." I go, "Really?" I said, "Well, I would fight Ray for nothing, let alone $1 million." He goes,
Mhm.
"Shut up, don't ever say that again." He goes, "We're gonna get way more than 1 million." But so will you fight him? And I said, "Of course I'll fight Ray Leonard." I was about a year and a half before the fight. And they wanted me to beat somebody that was of serious credibility to make the Leonard fight believable, you
Mhm.
know. So I fought Leslie Stewart, who was a former champion. He won it from Marvin, lost it to Hill, but they wanted to see me beat somebody like of his stature. Because at that time they were saying he should move to heavyweight and fight Tyson because nobody at light heavyweight can beat him. Like he was very highly thought of, Leslie Stewart,
Yeah.
when I fought him. So we put the Stewart fight together, and if I won that fight, I got Leonard. That was the deal. And so, yes, of course, I won the fight. We did the announcement thing for me to fight Ray. But ironically, I mean, it might sound kind of obstinate even. It was definitely ignorant. I thought it was an easy fight. I thought, like, there's no way in hell I lose to Ray Leonard. He's a welterweight. Yeah, he moved to middleweight and beat Hagler, but he's a welterweight. So, I mean, he can't, there's no way he's going to hurt me. He's only a welterweight. And I will destroy him when I hit him because he's a smaller person.
Right.
Nothing against him. I'm
And
just
he
saying now.
wasn't a big welterweight either.
Right. Right, right. So I'm thinking like this guy's nuts. Why would a welterweight think he can fight a light heavyweight who can punch? Fight Virgil Hill is not a puncher. Maybe you can outbox him. But you're not gonna, but I'm not gonna hit you. You know, I literally thought he was nuts for, and I told my manager the whole training camp for a whole year before. I said, Dave, the fight's not happening. One day Ray's gonna wake up and go, what am I doing fighting a light heavyweight? Especially one who can punch. No, this is stupid. I'm not doing it. I find a way out. In the dressing room, I fall asleep on the massage table. The only other person in the dressing room is with me and my manager is Bob Dylan. He's in the corner, came as support. And I fall asleep in the dressing room listening to Dylan music. My manager wakes me up and he goes, okay, you can believe the fight's going to happen. Ray's in the ring. Get the hell up and get in there. I was literally asleep when Ray went into that ring,
That is
thinking the
insane.
fight wasn't going to happen. I was that convinced. Okay, okay, this fight's happening. Let's go. So it was surreal. And again, it was ignorant because Ray Leonard's a super talented guy who, as history has shown, smaller guys can move up and beat bigger guys. It's now happened in the heavyweight division. Roy Jones beat heavyweights. James Toney, middleweight, beat heavyweights.
Right.
I mean, like monsters. James Toney made Evander Holyfield look like a kid learning. He beat Holyfield so one-sided. And Holyfield fought everybody, like he knocked out Mike Tyson.
Right.
Like, I mean, this stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
But back in our day, you didn't think of a welter, like nobody had ever moved from light heavyweight to heavyweight and won the world heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Michael Spinks did it first
Right.
in '88 or something. Nobody had ever gone from welterweight and won at light heavyweight. Sugar Ray Robinson famously tried to, but got stopped in the 14th round from heat exhaustion. This stuff had never happened before. So
Right.
in my mind, I literally thought it
A-
couldn't happen.
And real quick before, so was this fight? It was at super middleweight, right? Super middleweight had just been created.
Correct. So well, it had been created. There was already Shong Pal Park was the IBF super middleweight champion. There were other sanctioning bodies, but it was when the WBC first recognized the super middleweights.
And so you dropped, what was it? You went 175 to 168 for this, right?
Correct. Correct. Ray went 160 to 168.
Okay, so it's same difference almost, essentially.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
he's coming up, you're coming down. Was that cut hard for you?
Well, it wasn't hard in that I was an extremely committed trainer and I loved running. Like I said, I ran marathons. I loved running. I loved sparring. So I enjoyed the cut, but I overdid it by being too enthusiastic about it, so to speak. And I actually weighed 163 pounds for the fight,
Gee,
not 160.
you could have fought him at
If you
welter.
look at if you look at the weigh-in, I'm wearing all my clothes. And I had actually coins in my pockets for more weight because we didn't want him to know I had overtrained.
Right. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
so making the weight wasn't the hard part. Having the resilience and stamina through 12 rounds against the intensity of a Ray Leonard was the problem.
So before I get into that real quick, I do want to ask, because that's actually very interesting. Do you ever feel like you could have fought at a lighter weight and also had an amazing career?
No, I don't think I needed to be lighter.
Okay.
Light heavyweight was my best weight.
Oh,
I
okay.
could make 168, like I said, but I didn't have the resilience and the stamina over 12 hard rounds at a world title level
Okay.
at 160.
Yeah.
If you know the body, I was a fanatic. When I ran the New York City Marathon at 29 years old, I ran with the US 100-mile champion.
Mm,
She was a female. And her time, because she ran 100 miles, was like her average time was about 8 minutes. And
mm,
she needed to break 7 minutes, a marathon of 7 minute average, to get in Boston, to qualify for Boston.
okay.
So she asked me if I would run because I ran 7 minute miles. She asked me if I would run and pace her so she could make 7 minutes in New York so she could do Boston. And she said, I'll help you do the distance. So she helped me. We trained together. I helped her. And she got me through the distance part because it was very hard for me. And we were at a 6.5 minute pace until the 18th mile. And I hit the wall, my legs locked straight. And she said, Donnie, just eat this power bar. It'll loosen the electrolytes will loosen up your legs. I was like, no, I don't need anything that's not natural because there was unnatural stuff in a power bar. And finally she like begged, she goes, look, I'm not stopping because I promised you I'd get you to the finish. I said, you have to just keep going. She said, I'm not stopping helping you finish. That was our deal. I have to help you finish just like you have to help me with the time. And I said, yeah, but I can't make the time anymore. So you just go make the time. I'll find a subway stop. She said, no, please just eat this power bar. So I ate a power bar. My legs loosened up and I finished the race in like 3:19, not early enough. But the point is, I would not eat anything that wasn't very healthy. So for me to lose weight wasn't hard. If you're going to run 5 miles and spar 10 rounds and do the fitness weight training stuff and everything that fighters do training for a world title fight, you're not going to hold on to weight if you're eating in such a way to lose the weight. I could control my weight very much, but I overdid it just mentally. I overdid everything. I ran too fast. I ran too many miles. I sparred too many rounds. I just overdid it.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible, though. Again, another little side story here about your marathon pace. That is an incredible pace. I mean, of course, you talk about like Olympic trial qualifiers and professionals. It's obviously not the same, but like for anybody, even an athlete, that's an incredible 6.5 minute mile pace through, what did you say, 18 miles?
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. So yeah, but I mean, of course, there's trade-offs, like you said, but your aerobic capacity had to be on another level coming into this fight. And so you come in with you're rocking the mullet, which I loved. I thought that was great. And you came in and man, I don't watch a lot of old fights, but yeah, this one caught my eye for sure when I saw it for the first time, and it was beautiful, honestly. It was a great fight. So yeah, so just talk me through that whole fight and what that was like.
Well, the strategy was to me control the fight by keeping him at the end of my jab and by making him try to get in. So by doing that, he had to expose himself and I just had to catch him once. That was the theory, basically. And that worked to perfection the first 4 rounds. If you think of the fight and watch it again, you'll see. He literally barely touched me, didn't connect with anything solid in the first 4 rounds. And I was hitting him all the time. Not huge bombs, but him just trying to come in, be catching him a little bit here, a little bit. And it messes you up. Like when you think you're in landing on somebody and they hit you instead, it discombobulates your brain, your head, your rhythm, your timing. And he was 0-4 after 4 rounds and the knockdown. I was up 5 points after 4 rounds.
And
It
by the
was
way, that was his
one-sided.
second knockdown in his career, correct?
Right, right. But I mean, it
Yeah.
was like one side, it was a one-sided fight. And that's how I expected the whole fight to be. And I honestly felt I had the ability to beat him like that.
Mhm.
But when he went down, the thought, unfortunately, that went through my mind was, I didn't even hit him clean. Next time I hit him, this is over. I completely changed how I was fighting. You can watch the fight. I start waiting for him. Instead of keeping him at the end of my jab, I'm waiting for him, letting him come in. Because when I hit him, it's over.
Right.
That mentality versus set him up, keep him at the end, keep him out there, keep him trying to work his way in. When he exposes himself, trying to work his way in, nail him,
Right.
right? That was the strategy that was working, not wait. Because when you wait on Ray Leonard, he picks it up. I mean, I could show you the part of the fight where all of a sudden you see him realize, I'm not doing what I was doing the first 4 rounds.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden he started like shucking and jiving and moving like this and doing this and that.
Yeah.
He started thinking, oh my God, he's giving me space here to do my thing.
Yeah.
And I did. And he would catch me. I would stand there thinking, he's not going to hurt me, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, he's scoring points, making me miss. I'm out of my rhythm and my sync. He's not the end of my jab. He's inside of it. And then after a few rounds of that, taking quite a few good shots. Ray knows how to punch, and he's smaller than me. But when you time punches again, when you time them well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So he caught me with some good shots. He hurt me a few times, and then I started realizing I have to get back to my fighting style. What my strategy was coming into this, and I did that in the eighth round. And I hit him and I hurt him, hitting him from pillar to post kind of thing right at the end. And then the ninth round came, and same thing. I started, hit him a left hook, right hand. He was hurt. And then I started realizing how weak I was because I'm hitting him with all these shots and he's still there. I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? And at that point, he kind of like looks up and realizes I'm second guessing myself. This is all without anybody saying anything to either one of us. This is all stuff that just happens. And he just saw that moment of opportunity and stepped in and hit me with a left hook when I was walking away with my hand down. And he hit me with a left hook, and I got up and kind of just went like this and half smiled. In my head, I was like, he's got me. I've got nothing left. Like I was literally, like I said, dehydrated.
Yeah.
Like in the marathon, when I hit that wall at the 18th mile, my legs were locked straight. I had no electrolytes. It was the same as in the fight. I had no, like my cognizance wasn't good. When he hit me, he actually, the final combination, because again, if you watch it, you see I make a miss. So I'm conscientious enough. I'm awake enough, aware, alert, physically capable of making him miss all these punches.
Yeah.
But then I pulled out like this and hit me with a two-punch combination to the throat and crushed my larynx. So
Wow.
my larynx is why I went down. I wasn't discombobulated mentally. He hit my larynx, and when he crushed it, so I only have half a larynx. Like
Oh,
it's supposed
wow.
to be round, I only have half. And when that happened, it knocked the air out of my body. So your body collapses because you got no oxygen. And the
Right.
doctor said I was within like 200 millimeters of dying, like a very, very, very small amount of dying. He said, because you would have had no air, but you ended up with a tiny bit, and that's how you survived. But anyway, that was the end of the fight.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that I wasn't able to fight Ray Leonard. It wasn't that didn't know how to make him miss or land the punches or, I was capable on a skill level to compete at that level. But I didn't have the resilience or endurance that day because I overtrained. My fault 100%. And I didn't have the body that part of my life and great later because I had so many injuries. I got through them. I had a guy fix them, but I was worn down from injuries my whole life, know, from hockey, from football, knocked out many times in football, playing for I was a kick return, punt
Yeah.
return
Yeah.
off. So you get the head-ons from the guys running down the field and bam, you get knocked out a lot.
I mean, that's the
So I
most
had
dangerous
a lot of
position usually.
sorry.
That's really like the most dangerous position in football is kick returner, punt returner.
Right. So that's what I did, a linebacker. And then hockey. I was very physical hockey. And
Yeah.
then boxing. Yeah. So I had a lot of wear and tear. And by the time I got in my 30s, I was too beat up to really have the resilience, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
I was 28 when I got to the world championship level of boxing. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I loved boxing. It was just nothing but a riot. And the fight with Leonard was fun. I mean, I enjoyed the whole thing until the very end. And I realized I'm lying on the couch. I was like, how the hell did that happen? Like a minute ago, I was up the ref. Hey, what do you want to do? Kill this guy? I literally
Yeah.
said, stop this thing. What do you want to do? Kill this guy?
Right. Yeah, and you walked away with a pretty handsome purse as well. So you kind of, at that point in the late 80s, you had basically set yourself up for life, really, with those finances. But you kept on going and you had, what was it, two comebacks, two or three comebacks after you had retired and came back. So, yeah, so take me towards that end of your career and then, where you're at now.
Sure. Well, 1988, the Canadian government decided that I owed some money, which I didn't. They never proved I did. And so they froze all my assets. I'd done a good job of managing my portfolio with real estate. I went from, when you get $5.5 million in boxing, the management, taxes, and everything, trainers, I have with about a third of it, 40%, 38%. which is about 1.7 million. And I had managed it over 10 years to 98, 10 years later, to 6.4 million in net worth. Was my last tax return. So
Wow.
I had done,
Yeah.
but the Canadian government didn't agree with some of the things that my accountants suggested I do. I wasn't an accountant. And so they froze all my assets and all my money. And for fighting them for 5 years with no access to money, everything. So in 2003 is when they finally forced me into bankruptcy after I fought them for 5 years. So after that, I had to make a decision of what to do. And I said, if I come to my country with millions and having done something on a sporting level that I was very well welcomed by the country for, and they do that to me and I'm leaving with nothing, I'm sure as heck don't want to go back to that country.
Right.
So I left Canada in 2003, right after my last fight, Virgil Hill. If I beat Hill, I had Roy Jones for 5 million.
Oh,
That,
wow.
that was the conversation. So that's why I went back the last time. I was like, I can get Hill, then I can get Jones, and I get back to financial equilibrium here. And the bankruptcy hadn't happened yet. I was still fighting them. I'm like, no, that's not true. I can, but lawyers wouldn't even represent me because I didn't have money to pay them. So I'd have to go to court, fight the tax government by myself. Anyway, eventually I lost. So I came to Costa Rica and started again. First lot I bought was for $4,000. I borrowed two to give a deposit and owed the other two to the person who sold it to me for four, who became a very good friend, and just rebuilt from there.
Yeah.
And made that final comeback was 2003. And since then, just been living life in the jungle, loving it. Just where I've wanted to be my whole life, just in nature with God. And anybody can call the creator of all whatever they want. I'm comfortable with God. I live in this paradise and I try to share what I can about natural health because it helped me so much. I'm about to start this podcast called Taking Care of Our Own.
But you were mentioning the TKOO or TK of our own, TKO triple O. Yeah. And so I saw you had started that thing. So you said you're doing a podcast.
Well, my daughter's twisting my arm saying I should do one. There's no downside in that it's just sharing knowledge and experiences of natural healing, things that I've gone through that could help them, and also try to connect a charitable element to it and raise some money. John Scully, he's a former number one contender, fought Michael Nunn for the world super middleweight belt. He also trained Beterbiev recently, he's known for that. But anyway, he does a lot to help fighters to raise his money. So I don't really need to start a whole nother organization to do it, but I will use the vehicle, the podcast and the vehicle to try and help him connect with fighters and while try and help fund his efforts of connecting with fighters and helping fighters in need today.
Yeah, man. Sounds great. And the last thing I really just wanted to ask here was you look great. What are we doing now every day to kind of keep up that health?
Thank you. I run once in a while, most few times a week kind of thing. Work hard on my farm because I like it. I like physical labor. So like I bought 1,200, I don't know how many for sure, maybe 1,500 trees a few years ago, teak trees to make stuff. So moving trees around keeps you in pretty good shape.
Hey, well, we're basically at the end here. I did get to catch the last couple things you had
Oh,
said.
good. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. So we're basically at the end here. And so thank you so much. These were some really, really good stories, some that I already knew about and a lot that I wasn't even expecting. So definitely lived a hell of a life. So thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. And if there's anything else you want to leave
Thank
off
you.
with,
Good luck to all of your venture on this podcast. I'm sure it'll be great. You're very comfortable to speak with, so I'm sure you're going to do great. I don't really have a great big parting message other than love, blessings to everybody and keep following the sport of boxing and enjoying the sport of boxing. I think it's fantastic. I love it and it became my whole life.
yeah, sounds good, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me today. And maybe we'll see you soon on the podcasting scene. So.
Take care.
All right, thank you so
Yeah,
much. See you,
maybe
Donnie.
I need to get you on TKO. I need to get you on the TKO podcast.
Of course, anytime, man. Would love to.
Take care.
All right, thank you, Donnie. See you later.